Hey guys, PieGuyRules here, and if you haven't seen my recent Adventure Time video, you might want to, as this is a little bit of a follow-up to that. So the story behind this video is that I wanted to start making a bunch of Steven Universe videos. I've recently seen the series, and I am absolutely enamored with it. It is a fantastic show, and coincidentally, this comes at the same time that I'm starting to fall out of love with Adventure Time. And after my latest video, I've been thinking even more, and you know what? There are other problems the show has as well. And not just problems that came in the 6th season, there are problems that Adventure Time has had since the very beginning. It's just rarely anyone talked about them because the show was so good. It's kinda like how when you're in love with someone, you can't exactly see all their flaws until you break up and take a step away from them. And now that I've taken a step away from Adventure Time, there definitely are these flaws that I want to talk about. And to get this out of the way right now, I don't hate Adventure Time. I totally understand why a lot of people still like it. It's just gone too far off in the experimental deep end for me to still enjoy it. But that's just, of course, my personal opinion. Anyway, a lot of the problems that Adventure Time has now, and has had for a long time, are coincidentally things that Steven Universe does really well. So why not kill two birds with one stone and have a little bit of a transitional video from me talking a lot about Adventure Time to me talking more about Steven Universe by talking about 3 things that Adventure Time has problems with and Steven Universe excels at. Oh, and major spoiler warning, I am going to be spoilering a lot of things here. Number 3, the extended cast. Adventure Time has a lot of characters, and most of them are pretty great. But it gets so sidetracked in introducing new characters every 3rd episode, like Root Beer Guy. He was the focus for 1 episode, and then the next time he does anything, he is unceremoniously killed off. Maybe if they focus on actually developing the characters they have, instead of constantly trying to bring in new ones, it would be a lot better. When they keep bringing in so many of these characters, the show just feels cluttered. Rarely do we even get to see any of these minor characters interact with each other. Almost every single Lemon Grab episode is exclusively a Lemon Grab episode, meaning that it is Lemon Grab dealing with Finn, Jake, and Bubblegum. The obvious exception being Mystery Dungeon, which I find to be one of the best episodes of Season 5. This is especially jarring because it's not just that it introduces a lot of characters, it has a lot of characters take the spotlight as the center of attention for the episode for them to disappear from the show or appear a ton of episodes later. I'm okay with the antagonist of the episode being a one-off and for them to introduce a bunch of quirky ones for Finn and Jake to fight against, but there is just a lot of characters, particularly in the Candy Kingdom, that get a lot of screen time in their respective episodes and then not so much after that. If you're gonna go through the trouble of introducing characters in such an elaborate way, you might as well actually use them later. This isn't the worst problem that the show could have, but it just feels like a case of quantity over quality. And it feels like there's not too much to actually connect these characters together. You have some that are in the Flame Kingdom, some in the Candy Kingdom, some in Lumpy Space, or I guess Lumpy Space Princess isn't in Lumpy Space. You have Marceline over in her little corner, you have Prismo in his dimension. It's like these characters don't really get much of a chance to interact because they're all so separated. It's not like the show is a central meeting point of all these characters like a school or some other kind of hub. No, they're all sprawled across the land, so it's rare that we get to see any of them interact with each other. On Steven Universe, there's certainly quite a few side characters, but I think they are all handled pretty well. See, all of the side characters, the human characters on Steven Universe, are located on the Beach City boardwalk. So they're all in the same general vicinity. Not only that, but a lot of the characters we're introduced to are related to each other. The family that owns the pizza joint, the family that owns the fry place. We get to meet the mayor and his son, although not both at the same time. There's Onion, his dad, and what I think is his stepbrother, Sour Cream. There's Sadie and her mom, and Lars, who she works at the Big Donut with. Nearly all of the characters on the show are connected to each other through familial ties, through where they work, or through just the fact that they're all on the boardwalk. We also see a lot of interesting interactions, like Lars trying to fit in with the cool kids, or Sadie meeting Ronaldo, who was also coincidentally friends with Lars as a kid. There are a lot of these side characters, and even though the show's only early in its 2nd season now, so many of them have had the spotlight for multiple episodes. And we get to see them interacting with each other in new and interesting ways. Oftentimes, we get to see them really quickly, and then they get their own full episode later. It just really feels like it's the perfect size cast of characters so that there's quite a few to work with, but at the same time, you can recognize all of them. All of them have gotten the focus at some point and appear in multiple episodes. So, my second point here, tone. Now this was a big part of my major complaint in that other Adventure Time video I did. Adventure Time just doesn't feel fun anymore. Everyone is saying that the show is mature now and handles deeper themes and stuff, and I kinda disagree. The show used to handle big themes in earlier seasons, and also made it feel fun at the same time. I Remember You is a fantastic episode. It's dark and sad, certainly, but the episode just has an energy to it. I think it's because they use songs to convey the story, because somehow, even though it's so dark, it still feels fun. It's a dark kind of fun. It's super dramatic, but it just has that element of fun that's really hard to describe. Comparing that to something like the Lemon Hope two-parter, where it just all feels so weird, like every moment of it is trying to do some sort of symbolism and be artsy, and yeah, that's cool, but I'm just not seeing the fun factor in it. It just feels so heavy-handed. Lemon Hope is the one that's supposed to save the day because he is the one innocent pure thing that came out of the Lemon family. It's just so on the nose. It's so difficult to talk about the tone and feel of a show because it's not like it's just one thing that defines it. It's everything from the music to the dialogue to the camera angles and so much more. It's not like I could say, well, the music is bad here, or this is bad here, or this character acts in this way which makes it not fun. No, it's just an overall feeling of everything culminating, and it just seems like more of an emphasis was put to make the episodes earlier on fun, where they're just not as much now. On Steven Universe, there's a lot of sad and dark themes that are explored, like the fact that Steven's mom is essentially dead, and before Steven even got to know her. That stuff we find out very early on and is just a recurring theme throughout the entire series. We also find out that the gems are aliens that were invading the planet, planning on sucking the entire thing dry just to make more gems. Even though the show can certainly get heavy, it never feels not fun. It might just be that Steven is such an optimistic and happy character that it just rubs off on the fans. Or maybe it has something to do with the show's heavy use of songs, which are always fun, even if they are handling something dark and disturbing. It just feels like the show has such an optimistic and upbeat spin on everything. The dark and dramatic stuff is very entertaining and never feels like there's too much of it. The show knows how to balance out the serious with the silly. And I'm sure the show's gonna go to even darker places as it goes on, but it's got such a strong sense of fun that I trust that any heavy scene will still feel entertaining and be offset with something a lot more lighthearted. And number one, the biggest thing that Adventure Time has ultimately failed on is the story arcs. Good glob, does Adventure Time suck at story arcs. It always has. Look at the Lich arc. He has a small cameo in His Hero. He shows up in Mortal Folly and its sister Mortal Recoil. Has another small cameo in Your Footsteps, and then he next appears to be the main bad guy in the 4th season finale and 5th season premiere. Then his next appearance isn't until the 5th season finale in Finn's Memory, and actually again in season 6. This guy is the big bad of the entire series. He is one of the very few recurring antagonists. He only ever gets to actually do anything in season premieres and finales. Every other one of his appearances has been in Finn's dreams or memories, aside from one notable appearance with the bear where we actually get to see a little bit of foreshadowing of his plan. I get that it's more powerful of a story if we only see the Lich every so often, but it would be cool to see maybe little glimpses of what he's been up to, or maybe even have Finn and Jake actively learning about him and looking for him, or maybe looking for a weapon that can help fight him or something, because it doesn't feel so much like a story arc if the events are contained to like 2 episodes a season. Things should build on each other, little details and twists should happen frequently. Not every episode needs to have some giant revelation, but maybe a little progress towards stopping the big bad guy, or actually having the audience see what the bad guy has been up to and why he is such a source of death and destruction. Adding a little more goes a long way towards foreshadowing things and building plots up, rather than just have it be part 1 of the story at the beginning of the season and part 2 of the story at the end of the season, or vice versa. And no, the Lich being the snail in seasons 3 and 4, while cool, doesn't really count as building on the plot. Sure, it can serve as a constant reminder that he is always there, but it's not really a major plot point or anything. The writers of the show even talk about this in one of the commentaries, how they plan to have the Lich in the background for a lot of the episodes, building it up, but it never happened. The writers are aware of this mistake, and yet they never did anything to fix it. And it's not just the Lich. Every recurring plotline in this show is like this. From Lemongrab to Flame Princess. These characters only appear when it's a part of their arc. If the episode isn't about them, then for the most part, they aren't in it. Worst of all is the Simon arc. I was fine with it being in the background, as every time it popped up we got something interesting. From his unexpected introduction in Holly Jolly Secrets, to finding out about how he's a surrogate father to Marceline, to getting to see Simon during the apocalypse. But then Betty happened. This episode blew minds. It brought Betty to ooh, and it made her awesome too. Then, after that really short episode, poof, she disappeared. One quick glimpse, then she's gone for an entire season. Sure, she cameos quickly in Jake the Brick, but aside from that, it's like it never even happened. The show sets up so many things like Gunter having some sort of evil side and all the events of something big, and then it just sits on them. This kept me watching the show, just waiting, hoping they'd follow up on something interesting. The show has gotten more serious, yet they still have the same problems with taking forever to follow up on anything and not properly building on arcs. It's like we never get closure on anything. Even the Lich isn't really defeated for good. The plots we do get closure on have the other problem of ending too soon. Jake the Dad and Princess Bubblegum being 13 are two examples of things that came and went so fast. Lady's pregnant, a bunch of episodes go by where nothing is mentioned, then she gives birth in the same episode that they grow up. If the show really was as mature as a lot of people say it is, wouldn't it not be shying away from Jake being a father? But all we get is one episode and then a few scant appearances of Jake's kids here and there afterwards. Oh, and let's not forget about the Finn's arm arc, the one time they actually commit to a real tangible physical change in the series, and it lasts all of 6 episodes, with 2 of them not even being about Finn. This could have been the catalyst to a ton of stories about Finn coming to terms with his arm. It could have been a symbol of him having to deal with the reality of adventuring. It could have led him to question his trust in people. It could have been a thing that stuck with him forever. But nope, solved in 6 episodes. I don't think the show needs story arcs, but if they're going to have them, they should at least put more care into them. It's like they have all of these really interesting ideas they present, and then get distracted with random experimental one-off stuff for an entire season before remembering, oh yeah, they have a bunch of really cool stories they set up. And part of the reason the show's tone has issues is because some of the stuff like Finn's relationship woes and daddy drama doesn't mix well with the lighthearted stuff in the show. There's a way to have both, but the show just doesn't do it well anymore. In Steven Universe, you find out little bits and pieces about Steven's friends and the gems in nearly every episode. There are mini plot lines going on, like the Sadie Lars romance, Steven learning about his mom, Greg trying to be useful, and so many more. Nearly every episode builds on one of these plot lines, and it rarely feels like they sit on anything for too long. In Season 1, the biggest plot line was about Peridot invading the Earth. First we see her orb minions, and then she shows up, and then we learn what she's up to, and finally she comes down to Earth for the invasion. This is spread across a number of episodes and really feels like it builds up to the epic season finale, which incorporates the Lapis Lazuli plotline as well. This is way, way better than the way Adventure Time handles its plot lines. Even though I'm excited to learn more about the gems and all of that craziness going on with the action side of the show, Steven's friends are just as interesting as well, and the show takes time to develop each and every one of them over the course of the show, and does a fantastic job of balancing both gem stuff and Steven's friend stuff. I mean, even in episodes where you think we'd learn nothing new, like when Steven has to bring his family to meet with Connie's parents, we get to see the design of 4 of the gems fused together. And what's so cool about that is that we don't see the fusion dance, meaning that itself can be revealed in a later episode. This show is so good at just dripping in little information so that you are just satisfied watching every episode and learning just a little bit more. Not every episode of a show can have all of these crazy mind-bending revelations that season finales usually do, but the way Steven Universe does it is just so fantastic. There are very few episodes of this show that can be considered filler, and heck, one of them even goes explicitly out of its way to say, "It's not canon, bro." So there you have it. I think Steven Universe is an all-around better show, and without Adventure Time, I'm pretty sure Steven Universe would never have existed. So it absolutely gets props and respect for that, but Steven Universe is surpassing it, and I think maybe it's about time to start wrapping up Adventure Time. I really didn't make this to just crap on Adventure Time. Fingers crossed that the show will regain more of a balance and I'll enjoy it more in the future. I really, really want to. And with Season 7 coming up, maybe they'll work on these problems and bring it back a little bit. But for right now, we're gonna be moving into Steven Universe territory. Prepare yourselves for a Steven bomb. Pie Guy Rules, out.